Welcome to Relation Tales. Please like this video and subscribe Relation Tales. We're grateful for each and every one of you. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's begin. The steakhouse buzzed with weekend chatter, glasses clinking, and couples sharing private jokes. Across from me, Caroline twirled her fork with an oddly distant look in her eyes. We'd been together 3 years. 3 years of shared rent, shared struggles, late-night takeout, and promises about the future. I thought we were steady, maybe even unshakable. Then she looked up with a smile that wasn't really a smile. "David," she said lightly, as if she were commenting on the weather, "Mark reached out today. My ex. He wants to meet tomorrow, just for closure." For a moment, it felt like the walls tilted. The sound of laughter at the next table blurred, my grip tightening around my glass. She delivered the sentence so casually, like it was a harmless errand. I kept my face still, calm. Closure. My voice carried no edge, no hint of what I was really feeling. "Yeah," she nodded quickly, brushing her hair behind her ear. "I think it'll help me. I don't know, tie off loose ends. You understand, right?" What I understood was this. She wasn't asking. She was announcing. It wasn't respect. It was entitlement. So I leaned back, forced a small smile. "That's thoughtful of you," I said, letting the words drop like pebbles into deep water. Her shoulders loosened with relief, mistaking my composure for approval. But inside, I was already planning. Dinner went on with forced small talk, but my mind was elsewhere. Every detail of our life together ran through my head. Our morning routines, how I'd brew coffee while she scrolled through her phone, the way she'd fall asleep on the couch with her laptop still open. Our romance wasn't fiery anymore, but I thought it was safe. That night at the restaurant, I realized safety was a mirage. When the check came, I slid my card across the table, calm as ever. I drove us home, Caroline humming along to some pop song on the radio, oblivious to the storm building inside me. She kissed my cheek at the door, murmured, "You're amazing for understanding." I just smiled. The moment she disappeared into the bedroom, I pulled out my phone. A call, one short conversation with a professional moving company, and the first brick of revenge was set in place. As she drifted off, no doubt rehearsing what she'd say to Mark in their little closure meeting, I was wide awake, mapping out every move. By sunrise, our apartment would no longer be hers. And when she came back, expecting me to be waiting with open arms, she'd find a reality colder than any silence I could ever give. The next morning, I woke before the alarm, the early light cutting sharp lines across the ceiling. Beside me, Caroline stirred once, then rolled to her side, still asleep. For a moment, I just watched her, trying to remember when I stopped recognizing the woman I had fallen in love with. Maybe it was the little signs, the late-night work calls, the sudden distance, the way she laughed at her phone with her screen tilted away from me. Last night only confirmed what I already knew. At 7 a.m., the moving truck pulled up outside. The men worked quickly and quietly, boxing up her designer clothes, the shoes she obsessed over, the perfume she lined on the dresser. Every trace of her was removed with professional precision. I didn't lift a finger, just gave directions. My calmness unsettled even me. By 9 a.m., her half of the apartment was empty. A locksmith changed the locks while I poured my second coffee. When Caroline finally woke up, she padded into the kitchen, yawning, hair a mess, completely unaware of what I'd already set in motion. "Morning," she said, reaching for the orange juice. "Morning," I replied evenly, eyes fixed on my laptop. She noticed nothing, not the missing boxes, not the tension in the air. She just hummed while buttering her toast, talking about her closure meeting, as if it were brunch with an old friend. "Mark suggested we meet at that cafe downtown," she said casually. "It's neutral, you know. I'll only be gone an hour or two." I didn't argue. I didn't remind her that relationships don't survive these kinds of games. I just nodded. "Sure. Take your time." Her eyes softened like I was some saint of understanding. She kissed my cheek before leaving, her perfume lingering in the hallway. I stood there listening to the sound of her heels fade, then silence. That was the last time she'd ever leave this place as my partner. Caroline's closure didn't surprise me. She dressed for it like she was going on a date, soft curls in her hair, a coat that fit too perfectly, and lipstick I hadn't seen her wear in months. She walked into the cafe with anticipation, not the regret one should feel when meeting an ex. Mark was already there, leaning against the counter, looking smug. She didn't just smile when she saw him. She lit up. I wasn't physically there, but I didn't need to be. I had asked a friend to sit a few tables away, someone she wouldn't recognize. Later, he would tell me how she leaned in, laughing too hard at Mark's jokes, how her fingers brushed his across the table like it was a game. They weren't meeting for closure. They were reopening doors they had never truly closed. She stayed there for nearly 3 hours. The friend sent me quiet updates. She touched his hand. He leaned across, whispered something that made her blush. They hugged when they stood up. Not a goodbye hug, a hello hug. By the time she returned home, the apartment no longer belonged to her. Caroline climbed the stairs humming to herself, fishing in her purse for keys she no longer had. She jiggled the lock once, then frowned. Tried again. Confusion spread across her face. She knocked, expecting me to open. When the door didn't move, she pulled out her phone and called. My screen lit up with her name, but I let it ring. She called again, and again. Then her voice cut through the door. David? What's going on? I opened the door halfway, just enough for her to see past me. The apartment looked bare on her side. The empty dresser, the missing wardrobe, the blank spaces where her things once lived. What happened? She asked, panic edging her voice. I kept my tone calm, almost businesslike. Your belongings are packed. The moving company will deliver them to your mother's house by the end of the day. The locks are changed. You don't live here anymore. Her jaw dropped. Are you kidding me? Do I look like I'm kidding? I asked, stepping aside so she could take in the sight. The moving truck still idled at the curb outside. Her face drained of color. David, wait, this isn't what it looks like. It was just a conversation. I raised an eyebrow. 3 hours of laughing, leaning close, holding his hand, letting him whisper to you. That's closure. She froze. The cafe wasn't as neutral as she thought. You had someone watching me, she snapped, her voice rising. I didn't need to, I said coldly. Your actions speak for themselves. But yes, I confirmed it. I wanted to be absolutely sure before making a decision I'll never undo. She tried to push past me, but the locksmith had finished his job. She no longer had access. No way in. David, please, her voice cracked. We can talk about this. It didn't mean anything. You know I love you. I studied her carefully, remembering the countless mornings I made her coffee, the nights I stayed up with her when deadlines crushed her, the sacrifices I made without complaint. And here she was, standing outside, begging to be let in, after choosing another man over loyalty. Love, I said quietly. Love doesn't need closure. Love doesn't hide. Love doesn't lie to the person who's given you everything. What you had with me, it's finished. Tears welled in her eyes. You can't just throw me out like this. I stepped back, my expression unreadable. Already did. The door closed between us, her muffled sobs fading as the moving men carried the last of her things away. For the first time in months, the apartment felt quiet, peaceful. But it wasn't just about revenge. It was about clarity. I had been living in a house where betrayal wore the mask of love, and now that mask was gone. Caroline thought closure meant revisiting her past. Instead, it meant the end of her future with me. And as I sat on the couch, breathing deeply in the silence, I realized something vital. My revenge wasn't just punishment for her. It was liberation for me. Caroline didn't disappear quietly. For days after I locked her out, my phone buzzed nonstop. Calls, voicemails, texts that swung wildly between begging and fury. David, please pick up. We can fix this. It was just a conversation. You don't get to just end us like this. You're being dramatic. If you loved me, you'd give me a chance to explain. But what explanation could erase the way she looked at Mark? What offense could justify sneaking behind my back for closure that stretched into hours of flirtation? I didn't answer. Each silence for me was its own reply. She showed up in my office once, standing outside like a ghost I'd already buried. When I stepped outside for lunch, she tried to block my path. David, talk to me, she pleaded, her eyes swollen from crying. You can't just cut me out like this. We've built a life together. I looked her squarely in the eyes. No, Caroline, I build a life. You build excuses. There's a difference. The words landed harder than I expected. She flinched like I'd struck her. For a moment, I almost felt pity, but pity wasn't the same as forgiveness. She whispered, "It didn't mean anything. Mark, he just want to catch up." I was curious. That's all. I kept my voice calm, steady. "Then why did you dress like you were going on a first date? Why stay with him for 3 hours? Why touch his hand like you've been waiting for that chance?" Her lips trembled, but no answer came. Silence told me everything. I turned and walked away, leaving her in the middle of the sidewalk, her image shrinking behind me, as if she were finally fading into the past. That night, curiosity gnawed at me. Not about Caroline, she was done, but about Mark. I had spent years being compared to him in subtle ways. She'd never said it outright, but I always felt the shadow of her old relationship lingering over us. I needed to know if the man she risked everything for was worth even a fraction of what she threw away. So I made a call. The same friend who sat in the cafe agreed to dig a little deeper. It didn't take long before the truth came out. Mark wasn't some successful, charismatic ex who had his life together. He was a washed-up has-been, bouncing between jobs, always looking for an easy way back into stability. Caroline wasn't his great love. She was a safety net. My friend even overheard him at a bar a few nights later, bragging to someone about how easy it was to reel Caroline back in. He laughed about how desperate she seemed, how she still dressed up to impress him. I won't lie, hearing that stung. Not because I wanted her back, but because it confirmed the depth of her betrayal. She hadn't just chosen dishonesty over loyalty. She'd chosen weakness over strength. 2 weeks later, Caroline knocked again. But this time, she didn't come alone. Mark was with her, leaning against the railing like he owned the place. "David," she started, her voice trembling, "we just want to talk." I looked at them both, standing side by side, and I almost laughed. The man she risked our entire relationship for looked nothing like the fantasy she'd built in her head. His jacket was wrinkled. His eyes carried that restless energy of someone who'd never stayed long in one place. "Talk about what?" I asked flatly. "About us," Caroline insisted. "We made mistakes, but maybe we can work through this. We had something real, David. I don't want to throw it away." Mark smirked like he already knew the answer. "She deserves another chance, man. Don't be petty." That word, petty, struck me. Here was the man who had swooped in, gloating, taking pleasure in wrecking something I built, calling me petty for not forgiving betrayal. I stepped closer, my voice low, controlled. Petty is sneaking behind someone's back under the excuse of closure. Petty is running back to an ex because you're too weak to face the future with someone who gave you everything. What I'm doing isn't petty, it's permanent. Caroline's eyes filled with tears, but Mark's smirk faltered. He wasn't expecting resistance. He thought I'd crumble, that I'd be the desperate one. Instead, I shut the door, slowly, deliberately, leaving him on the other side with nothing but the sound of a lock clicking into place. Inside, I sat down and let the quiet wash over me. For the first time in months, maybe even years, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt clean. Caroline and Mark had each other now, but what did they really have? A lie built on betrayal, a flame destined to burn out because it was never love, it was convenience. And me? I had freedom. But more than that, I had delivered a revenge more cutting than shouting, more final than any argument. I had shown her what life without me looked like, and made sure she understood she'd never have it back. The locks, the moving truck, the silence, it was all closure. Not for her, for me. It didn't take long for the pieces of Caroline's new life with Mark to fall apart. I heard bits and pieces through mutual friends, things she probably never thought would make it back to me. Within weeks, Mark was already showing his true colors. He borrowed money from her, made promises about getting back on his feet, and started disappearing for nights at a time. Caroline, once so polished and confident, began unraveling. The same woman who laughed across from me at a restaurant and declared she needed closure was now clinging to someone who couldn't give her stability, let alone respect. One evening, my friend sent me a picture from social media. Caroline and Mark at some dive bar, her eyes tired, his arm draped lazily over her shoulders like he barely cared. The caption wasn't romantic. It was hollow, almost desperate. It was then I realized something. My revenge had gone far beyond the locks and moving truck. It wasn't just about taking away what we had. It was about letting her see exactly what she chose over loyalty. But Caroline wasn't ready to let go of me, even while sinking. She showed up again outside my building weeks later, alone this time, her hair unkempt, her voice hoarse from crying. She didn't look like the same woman who had once carefully curated every detail of her appearance. "David," she whispered when I opened the door, just enough to face her. "Please, I made a mistake. I don't know what I was thinking. You were the best thing that ever happened to me." I studied her for a long moment. I thought about the mornings we shared coffee, the nights we talked about vacations we'd never take, the plans we made for the future that she destroyed with one reckless choice. "Caroline," I said quietly, "you weren't looking for closure. You were looking for excitement. And now you've got it." Her eyes filled again. "It was nothing, I swear. I was stupid. But you're different. You're steady. Please let me come home." I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the way she smiled at Mark across that cafe table, the way she called it neutral ground, while secretly reliving her past. "You don't have a home here anymore," I said, my voice steady but firm. "I gave you love, loyalty, and a future. You gave me betrayal. That's not something you get to undo with an apology." Her lip trembled. She reached out as if to touch my arm, but I stepped back, letting distance replace whatever was left. "This is your closure," I finished. Then I shut the door for the last time. Caroline's story kept circling back to me through whispers in our social circle. Mark drained her savings, then left her for another woman he'd met at the same bar where they spent their nights. She tried to rebuild, but her reputation was already cracked. The people she once bragged to about her perfect relationship now shook their heads when her name came up. Some said she moved back in with her mother, defeated. Others said she tried to call old friends. But most had drifted away when they realized she had built her life on shallow decisions. And me? I didn't need to chase updates. I didn't need to gloat. I already had everything I wanted: peace, clarity, and the satisfaction of knowing my revenge had been precise, quiet, and irreversible. Weeks later, I sat in the same steakhouse where it all began. The clinking of glasses, the low hum of conversation, it all felt different now. I wasn't weighed down by betrayal. I wasn't scanning across the table for signs of dishonesty. I ordered my meal, enjoying the simplicity of being alone without tension in the air. The waiter poured my wine, and for the first time in a long time, I smiled genuinely. Caroline's chapter was closed, not with shouting, not with chaos, but with deliberate silence. That was the real revenge. As the months passed, I realized revenge wasn't about destroying her. It was about refusing to let her destroy me. It was about proving that no betrayal, no matter how painful, could define me unless I allowed it to. Caroline sought closure from her past, but I was the one who found it. Not in her words, not in her apologies, but in my decision to walk away and never look back. And that's when I understood something profound. Sometimes the strongest revenge isn't rage or cruelty. Sometimes the strongest revenge is living free of the person who thought they could replace your loyalty with lies. That night, as I left the restaurant alone, I felt lighter than I had in years. My footsteps echoed against the sidewalk, steady, unhurried. I wasn't a man abandoned. I was a man who chose himself over betrayal. And for Caroline, the locks, the moving truck, the silence, they weren't just the end of us. They were the beginning of her regret.